So The Killer is actually based on a graphic novel line out of France. And this is a recently
Mm,
adapted project from director David Fincher. He's been working a lot recently with Netflix. He's sort of transitioned from making theatrical feature films to working on a numerous amount of projects with Netflix. He did Mindhunter, he did Mank recently. That was his most recent feature film. And now he has The Killer. And so he's kind of operating in the space. I think a lot of directors are. They're trying to figure out like, what do they make films for? Where do they get seen? How do people see them? It's a really weird place to be in because David Fincher is an incredibly successful director. If you look at all of his movies and the box office receipts, his movies made bank. People went to go see them. They were some of the biggest hits of their respective years. But now The Killer did in fact have a small theatrical rollout before it arrived on Netflix this past weekend. So this is a high profile Netflix film, but it was a movie that was able to have a theatrical rollout. And of course, Michael Fassbender is a pretty well known star at this point. But this is
hmm.
the first movie he's really been in a number of years, really since 2019. And so he's also making a return here. And we got a chance to check out this movie a few weeks ago. So with all of that out the way, I will pass it over to you. What did you think about Fincher's new film, The Killer?
And Fincher. I was pretty excited to watch this film, man. Fincher is just a beast. He's a really good director. And so to be honest, thinking about it, I haven't had the opportunity to see a lot of his films in theaters. He hasn't been like a since I've been older to go to the movies, hasn't necessarily dropped like a ton of stuff for me to have time to go see. So I was finally like, yes, I get to go see a Fincher film in theaters. In The Killer, man, it's interesting because it's not his best film, but it does deliver on some other things for sure. And one of those things I think it delivers on is just having Michael Fassbender in your court is always going to be useful in some ways. This movie has crazy amount of voiceover. A lot of the time in this film, you spend it in Michael Fassbender's head, who is a contracted killer is literally what he is. And I think a lot of times voiceovers can be like make or break for me, depending on what it is. And a lot of times in anime, it works out because it one, they need to like waste time in the anime in order to make it longer. But also being able to see what a character is thinking helps a ton, right? That's actually what's so interesting about book adaptations. A lot of times you don't get that. You don't get the inner monologue that the character gets. And I think that's what makes this movie so interesting is you get to literally sit in the character's head for a good amount of the movie. So for watching it, that was like some of my favorite parts of the movie is just being like, okay, what is he thinking? What is he going through? What's happening here? So that was the draw for the movie for me in watching it. It was like, yeah, we get to spend a lot of time in this guy's head. That's pretty cool. Where it kind of falls flat is character development for me, maybe, or like a why did we do all this kind of thing. I think the message or whatever the movie is trying to say might have gone over my head, or I might have missed it. I don't know. Like it just felt like a thing that was happening, a story that was happening that didn't have much of a message. It was just kind of all situational. And I think that's where again it kind of fell short for me just a little bit. I feel like the story within itself was just okay. And a lot of the action I enjoyed. A lot of the action I had a good time with, but by the end of it, I was like, okay, but what are we doing? Like, why are we here? Kind of type of thing by the end of it. So it was fine. I think because it's Fincher, maybe my expectations were too like I thought it was going to be like some emotional payoff, like Seven or Zodiac. All of these crazy movies have all of this payoff to me, but here didn't. I don't know. It just didn't feel like The Killer had like an ending that I was like, yeah, this is a great ending to a film, and I think that's what made it just okay for me by the end of it. I love the sound design in this movie. I know it's random and nerdy, but I thought the sound design was tremendous. There's a lot of quiet moments that you get with the main character, and you can hear everything clearly and where everything's positioned. I think the sound design is fire. But it's just an okay movie to me, and that's too bad because it is Fincher. I think that he is really good at making films, but overall, it just ends up being okay.
So David Fincher, he's one of my favorite directors. He's made some of my absolute favorite movies, just pure classics at this point, especially beginning in the 90s. There's just so many. And so this new space that he's occupied over the past few years has kind of troubled me. Like Mindhunter is really, really good, But then Mank comes out and it's a huge deviation from his style. And so The Killer, once I saw the previews and understood the story, this felt like a return to form for Fincher. And I was super, super excited. And I gotta say, I really like this movie. I think that a part of the reason this movie feels the way that it does, it kind of feels like Fincher's trolling his own career, because I think people do come to this expecting an emotional payoff. They expect it to have this huge resounding third act like some of his other
Mhm.
films had. But this movie is literally about a cold and calculated assassin who's supposed to be completely impersonal. Like, this guy
Mhm.
operates in this place that I don't think anybody is supposed to relate to. And Fincher is, he's probably one of the most deliberate and precise directors living right now. Like, the guy is notorious for his directorial style. He's made people do countless numbers of takes. Like, there's that famous story about the opening scene from The Social Network, which is like one of the best scenes of the 21st century, but it took 100 takes to get them there to
Wow.
that place because he wanted to piss the actors off so much to get them so fed up and so irritated by the process that their performance and when it came out felt as natural and real as it could be. And Michael Fassbender in this movie kind of feels like the perfect person for the role, because when you think of Michael Fassbender, he's done so many weird roles in this way where he doesn't feel like an actual person. I think about like the Alien movies that he did with Ridley Scott, like he's
Mhm.
actually playing an android. He's
Yeah.
exceptionally good at that. And so for him to come in as an assassin with really minimal dialogue, but voiceover, not real-time dialogue, but a lot of voiceover explaining his process and his deliberate nature and how precise he is and how careful he is. All of that stuff really, really worked for me because I think that Michael Fassbender is like one of the best actors to really pull that off. And beyond that, from an actual just stylistic perspective, Fincher is just, I think, still one of the best in terms of delivering really slick, stylish entertainment, like movies that just look,
Mhm.
sound, and feel good, almost better than many other directors can. And I think, especially in the way of psychological thrillers and murder mysteries and crime dramas, which he's been exceptional at, this is now sort of a new entry to that genre that he's kind of perfected. But again, it's on the opposite spectrum. It's not really diving deep into a character study. It's not unpacking somebody slowly becoming obsessed with their particular subject, like Jake Gyllenhaal in Zodiac. Like, this is just about a guy who is probably the most heinous, cold, calculated person on the planet, and he has no problems assassinating people. He doesn't think twice about it. But now he ends up in a situation to where he's on the defensive end because he fucks up a mission and now he has to go on the run, and he comes into
Mhm.
contact with all these people, and you just get to see sequence after sequence. And so I do think for a lot of people who see this, they'll probably say like, oh, well, it's not really a story. It's just kind of a string of scenes, put together. And I think that there's validity to that, but I think it's intentional. I think it's super intentional to just see like the course
Mhm.
of events that take place once he does, sort of set off this chain of events that kind of lead him down this particular path. But once you watch him execute these assignments and you hear Michael Fassbender just like talk his way and voice over his way through the movie, there's some really funny moments. I think that there's some moments again that just kind of stand out where it's like, yo, this is like really strange and weird, but I'm actually kind of here for it. And also, there's a fight sequence late in this film that is fucking amazing. The
It's
hand-to-hand combat
crazy. Oh
is
my god.
ridiculous. It just goes on and on and on. It's really, really long. It's incredible. And there's not too many directors that can pull off that type of particular action sequence and make you still care about a guy, even though he's not supposed to be anybody you relate to. And so overall, I enjoyed it. I think that again, this is kind of a return to form for Fincher. I do hope that he continues to lean into this style of films. He's obviously a director of many talents and can do a wide variety of stories, but it's
Mhm.
something about these types of crime dramas, these psychological dramas that he's just really exceptional in that. And so I overall I can't recommend it enough. But folks, those are all of our thoughts about David Fincher's new film, The Killer. If you check this out in theaters or on Netflix, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.